Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today, we have a very special guest, Patrick Green. He is currently of indeterminate location in the American Northeast, and he is has been, a terrestrial radio host for the 90s, a professional database developer, audio engineering hobbyist, a podcaster, an Austrian economics enthusiast, and shitposter extraordinaire on the X platform. You can find him at Road to Serfdom 3. We're going to get right back to him in 2 seconds. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe? Always need more volunteer dreamers. I'll talk to anybody. You don't have to be a personality or have any kind of following. You can just be a regular person. We all have dreams, and I'll talk to anybody. Also, more viewers for the video game streams, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific. Most days. Sometimes I finish a game and I take the rest of the week off. This show brought to you in part also by 17 currently available works of historical dream literature. I'm going to feature this week ABC Book 3. I call my series Augury, Bibliomancy, and Chaos. It is ABC Book 3, Onerochronologia, Volume 1. Yes, I invented that word, and it's a mishmash of Greek and Latin. I do what I want. Don't tell me what to do. It means roughly the study of the interpretation of dreams over time. Onerochronologia. Yeah. It is a this particular 3-volume set is the evolution of dream interpretation, specifically I think starting in the 1500s and leading up to the 1800s. It's an anthology set that features shorter works of historical dream literature, which would not make a full book on their own, so brought them together in an anthology so that they would not get lost to history. Of course, you can find all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, including downloadable MP3 versions of these very podcasts, audio only. You can take the wizard with you wherever you wander, with or without Wi-Fi. I love alliteration. And lastly, because this is now the longest introduction ever, if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, I'm building a community there. It is free to join, attached to my Rumble account. If you follow me on Rumble, why are you not already a member of my locals? I'm not charging any money. Come on in and say hello. That's where I'd like to, get guests for these podcasts as well. Best place to contact me is on locals. And that is more than enough out of me. Let's get back to Patrick Green. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time.
No worries. That's really cool hearing about all the series that you have. I almost feel like asking you questions about that. And maybe
you can interview me too. That's fine. This is loosey goosey.
Yeah,
we do whatever we want. It's my libertarian streak.
Yeah, and I think it's appropriate for me. It's something we didn't talk about because we've been chatting already for a bit.
I know we lost so much good material. That's okay. We'll get it back.
Yeah, is that there's a book that I should be writing, and I'm planning to write, which is, I'm just going to call it Bunker Hunters, and it's the follow-up to Mass Recall. It's this projected future history of how civilization might look after mass recall, after decentralization, and try to address and anticipate some of the problems ahead of time and get people into the mode of thinking about addressing those problems. And I think you'll kind of understand this because we know that cybernetic social engineering and the conditioning of the movies and the subject matter of TV shows and books has definitely had an influence on people's psyches, right? And it sort of conditions them to be ready for a certain thing. So why don't we use that to our own advantage? And I had the thought of, getting people to think about mass recall, think about decentralization, and think about what it will be like when that happens.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like with Star Trek, we have this idea that we're going to have, warp drives and be able to go faster than light. And that's not going to happen, but we believe it enough. We're into the show. There are people now who would probably put a whole bunch of money behind somebody who claimed to be able to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So definitely the culture has been changed by science fiction, right, in that respect. So why can't we change the culture of government tolerance and actually just have people presume the opposite, right?
Yeah. And there's a big myth out there in a way, or what is it? It's co-opting. It's communist co-opting. They call it luxury space communism. It's not. They're not communist at all. It's a very merit-based system. And you go, and there's people that still do commerce, and they have gold-pressed platinum, and there's still capitalism, or and that's another thing too. Is I don't like using, say, Marxist terminology for things. I don't think there's any such thing as capitalism. I think what they're describing is freedom of association and private property. those two things, the
Yeah.
self-ownership and the ability to trade or not trade with anyone based on, voluntary exchange of property rights. I have a thing, I want your thing more, we're going to trade, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So
And then
Star
it
Trek,
has
not
reputation.
luxury space communism, not at all.
Yeah, and obviously reputation and all that. But
For sure.
I of course, I don't usually try to make any I don't try to defend the politics or the economics of Star Trek or
Sure.
lack thereof.
Yeah.
But it's more of just
It's a
more of
popular
the idea
talking
of the
point.
science. Well, yeah, more of the science, the fact that the trope, not just Star Trek, but all science fiction, this trope of interstellar travel faster than light, somebody will come up with a solution to it, and therefore we can justify the story.
Oh, yeah.
And gets people into the idea, even though the thing isn't possible yet, really at all. So why can't we do something like that? Get people to think about a decentralized world where there are no major superstates, and they're really, they're failed states. People start to think about this that way, and then have stories based in reality. Like they one of the things that they're doing is they're getting people used to the idea of the Walking Dead land. You know what I mean, where there are zombies, and every day you get up and it's you're just lucky to be able to drink your coffee and smoke a cigarette, and later on there's going to be zombies coming out and attacking you. So don't worry about saving, or don't worry about your kids. Don't have any kids. Kill your kids. Basically, this fear porn and stuff is to put people into this state of anxiety, I think. And so why can't we use the same mechanisms, the same propaganda things to try to condition people for a decentralized world?
Well, yeah, I mean, that raises a very good point too, which is that tools are tools. They can be used for good or evil. Just like I'm trying to, at some point, I'm going to write a book myself on the different kinds of wizards, and there are evil wizards. Wizardry is it is what it is. It is tool. It's like being a scientist of any other kind, or an artist or a practitioner. It's like a gun
Harry
can be used for
Dresden
self-defense
is
or murder.
Definitely a good. Yeah, Harry Dresden is a good wizard.
And then there's a lot of people that one idea that's really grabbed me is the idea of the necromancer as the archetypal evil wizard. Is like they're using their powers to make puppets, to make zombies out of other people, for their control, for their own self-aggrandizement, to use people as tools for their fulfillment or power.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. That'll be in the book someday. I had a couple other ideas too, and I write these things down because I'm gonna forget. I got the squirreliest of brains. Squirrel, like that. The idea that science fiction always precedes science fact. Someone had to imagine a thing to be possible, and then investigate it and attempt to make it a reality. So everything starts in imagination. It starts in what we conceive of, and and then getting back to your original point, the idea that stories, mythology really does matter. It's the stories they give us. There's a phrase I use, is that memes are the framework upon which our perception of reality hangs. You give people a story about what a thing is, and that's how they understand. It gives them the paradigm or schema for how to understand it. And the tools, the otherwise neutral tools, are being used by the enemy, the propagandists, to shape the story that tells us what a thing is, and then also how we should feel about it or understand it in context of other things. And I think it's absolutely necessary to do that for good rather than evil. Yeah. Right. Don't see that ground of the enemy. We talked about the idea of cancel culture earlier, and that's a sticky one too, because I always think of cancel culture as specifically using the tool of social responsibility for evil purposes, and it can be used for good. Now that they they respond, well, it's just accountability culture. I'm like, that is actually a separate category. These things are not conflated. They want to conflate them so that they can cancel anyone and feel like good people. But when it's used for good, I mean, we might ostracize someone who's being a jerk. You're just not welcome to the party. You're ruining the vibe. You may leave, show you the door. Nothing wrong with that. But then there's a thing where the person just, they're wearing a MAGA hat. And it's like, you're evil. You have to leave. You're not allowed here. It's like, I didn't even said anything. You don't know anything about me. And maybe you have the wrong perception or idea or understanding of what I actually support, what this symbol means to me. Anyway, I was going somewhere with that. I'll stop for a second. But it's all about the stories, right?
Well, and I have a whole bunch of offshoots that and tangents on that subject that I'm going to try to fight against my instincts to jump
Oh
on
yeah.
those, because there's so many interesting topics, but it's so important. The stories are so important to how people understand this, and this has been the function of this. What I've been talking about on my Twitter, Road to
Hmm.
Serfdom, a lot is cybernetic social engineering, and this is actually it's what a cybernetic system is a self-regulating system of social control. That's actually the definition of it originally.
Hmm.
There is the metaphorical interpretation of cybernetics in this social, at least at the very least, even if you don't accept that originally it was about social control, because the original name of cybernetics was the science of control.
Mm.
And the guy who invented cybernetics for the workplace, Beers, Stafford Beers, um, describes his interpretation of it as if it was the original interpretation. I tend to accept that. But even if that wasn't the case, it certainly is being used that way now as a way to manage social systems. So you create a social system that self-regulates, i.e., has peer pressure influences
Hmm.
that correct on a specific original function, original teleological measurement for the system. So an end that the system is designed to achieve or arrive at. And as this, and so cybernetics is a direct transliteration of the Greek word Kubernetes, which means to the steersman. And so in Greek, it's the steersman, the cybernetics, because of the direct transliteration. If you went first to Latin from Greek, you get gubernator, and then gubernator becomes governor.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll see governor as the name of a physical system that governs and maintains a system within a certain safe range.
Hmm.
The best metaphor is usually something like the Watt steam engine regulator that makes sure that so if it gets too hot, it spins faster, and that raises the thing because of centrifugal force. So it's built right into the system to limit how far it can go in one or the other direction. That's sort of the definition of a cybernetic system.
Gotcha.
But but that already existed because, of course, the Watt steam engine already existed. So it's an intrinsic control system in the mechanical sense.
Hmm.
But to call it cybernetics was this other thing, the science of control, that they renamed to cybernetics because they realized that people would see what they were doing. And eugenics, this is a replacement for eugenics.
Hmm.
Cybernetics is actually directly related to the same ideology of eugenics. This is the kind of stuff that I started to realize when I no longer had anything stopping me from checking.
Oh yeah, and
You know
then
what I mean?
and I just want to throw it out there too, because some people are going to hear that and go, cybernetics. You mean like the $6 million man, like bionics? Like they're going to think
Yeah,
cyber as in replacing body
that's
parts,
intentional.
transhumanist.
Yeah. And everybody wants, that the first indications of this obfuscation of the definition of the word that I know of came about with like William Gibson
Mm.
and Necromancer,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Neuromancer, I should say.
yeah, yeah.
So in the Neuromancer, the idea was a cyber deck, and but actually the system itself, the word was come up with by what's his name? I can't remember his name. He's the grand poobah of it, though, and he's credited with giving it that name too, because, as I said, it was originally a science of control in 1945, and by 1949 it was known as cybernetics, and
Hmm.
all the eugenicists had converted from eugenics to cybernetics, because again, it's the construction of social systems that have an agenda built in that is self-maintaining, so you don't need to have a supervisor. You don't necessarily need to police it. It will keep itself under the control. And this perfectly describe like the average teenage childhood experience of
Yeah,
this. They say, oh well, all the kids in my school are so mean and they do all these things. Well, this is all part of the cybernetic social engineering experiment, and they are being encouraged to do this through a variety of incentives and disincentives. You know
yep,
what I mean? And the system itself is self-regulating in the sense that all the girls say, "Well, we're going to do it, so why aren't you going to do it?"
yeah,
But the thing
yeah.
that they're all talking about was given to them by the state through media, or through government schools, or through something else, right? So this is what we're dealing with. This is a massive mind control thing, but it's really social control. It's social planning, and this is just what happens when you decide you're going to
Absolutely.
plan society, you actually have to plan society.
Yeah.
Every aspect of it.
And I was making that point earlier. I think it might have been off before we started, but that the eugenics has always been a progressive project going back 100 years, and it has not been abandoned. And I mean, people really need to get that in their head. It's like they think of that as an evil right-wing Nazi thing. Number one, I don't think Nazis were right-wing. I think they were just a different brand. In my opinion, it's two different competing brands of socialism. It's the Coke versus Pepsi of the socialist.
Global versus nationalist. That's the only real difference.
And the way I've phrased it on X before is that, what is it? Communism is socialism motivated by envy or resentment, and Nazism is socialism motivated by like disgust and purity. That what do you call it? The moral intuition type of thing. But they were both, both socialism. You're not getting away from this one. Oh, they deny it. The communists scream to high heaven. They were really socialists. Of course, it wasn't really communism either. But
in the end, it was corporativism, fascism that won all of them. Fascism is now every single government on the planet, I argue, is a corporativist state. Mm-hmm. And that is to say that they charter their own corporations, which conduct, for lack of a better word, state trade. And that this is responsible for things that the symptoms that confirm that this is true, that anyone can look at, is attitudes such as national debt, or not so much national debt. That's not right. What do I mean? Trade deficits. So when somebody says that we have a trade deficit with that country, that's to presume that my country makes stuff and sells it, and that the other country makes stuff and sells it. And we're supposed to make stuff more than the others. Who exactly is making this stuff? Is it the country that's making it? No, it's somebody or some buddies are all making that thing, right? Or selling that service. The government has no claim to it. That doesn't, you know what I mean? That's not part of the government's budget or anything like that, right? Except if you want to accept taxes and that kind of crap. But this idea that there would be any kind of a deficit makes no sense, because people are just exchanging goods, right? This can only be good for all the governments because they're just going to tax these transactions, right? There's no deficit anywhere to be seen. But the myth comes from this mercantilist arrangement back when the state, was totally in control of everything, planned the economy and chartered these corporations which would manage entire sectors of the economy. And they would be responsible for buying and selling all the tea for Britain. You know what I mean? They were the only ones. The British Navy would sink your ship if you tried to deal in this illicit substance that the government was the only one allowed to deal with.
You would get your charter, your permission. You would buy your license from the state to perform this, and then they enforce it, militarily by sinking ships or arresting, fining, imprisoning you today if you try. Kids with a lemonade stand, that's
exactly.
You don't have a license. You're not following food safety handling. It's a kid with a lemonade stand.
It is a mind virus. This idea that the government should be in control of these things, of course. But so it's a throwback to mercantilism, to monarchism, when the state was actually in control of the entire economy and essentially chose who would steward various resources. But that's what corporativism is a restoration of that very system, just without necessarily a king, although you could have a king. A corporativist arrangement is oligarchical, so you could still maintain the vestiges of nationalism. And that's what they're going. That's what they've done, is they've maintained the vestiges of nationalism with a globalist tint they're trying to put everybody on. They've already replaced all the governments with corporativist states. They're all part of it, and all these big organizations, the so-called NGOs, are corporativist organs of this global state. I call it the global totalitarian corporativist state.
Yeah. Well, and there's a phrase that some people may have heard, may not have heard, and it sounds like one thing, but it isn't. There's a lot of people online refer to it as globo homo. And it's not global homosexuality, which is a different. That's something.
It's just global homo.
Homogeneity. It's the idea of globally everything the same, all with the what is it? It was Tito or who was it in Italy? But he said, all within the state, nothing outside.
That's
the state.
Mussolini.
Mussolini. That's right. That's right. Tito was a different guy.
And the reason, by the way, I use the word corporativism is specifically because so many people, especially on the left, I say I'm anti-fascist. They say, yeah, me too. And I say, well, okay, well, we need to have a conversation here
Right.
about what capitalism is, what fascism is. And did
Yeah.
you know it's actually not? Like even Mussolini said fascism is not a good representation because it's corporativismo
Hmm.
that he called it. And I use corporativism, the direct anglicization of what he called it, because everybody, even corporatism has been misunderstood. People
Yeah.
think that means capitalism. That means corporations and capitalism seize control, which in Austrian economics, if we're talking about this in classical economics, that phenomenon would be called regulatory capture.
Yep.
And that is a concern. We don't want the government to have any influence on the economy or have any power to regulate the economy because of the fear of regulatory capture, right? So on the one hand, it's it's a good thing that people on the left are complaining about regulatory capture, and I
Hmm.
hope they keep that idea in their head for future conversations. But the important thing is we all have to understand this isn't regulatory capture. This is corporativism. The state is telling the corporations what they have to do, and they have to do it, or else the state punishes them, right?
Hmm.
And they don't make money. If you look at the corporations, they're actually not making money. So this is not a capitalist operation here. This is again social controls. It's social planning. That's what it's all about. So social and economic planning,
Oh yeah.
and the
Because that's never gone wrong
corporations.
before, right? Massive
Right,
top-down social planning hasn't
right,
killed
exactly, yeah.
millions in the 20th century alone. I did want to jump in for just 2 seconds here and go. You were describing. So I've had another idea I want to run by you, or at least just put it out there. We went from that divine right of kings, monarchism, and then we hit the Enlightenment and liberalism popped up, and there's been a lot of discussion about, well, what is that exactly? But there's principles involved in that, and two core promises that I've been able to suss out, and that they are, liberalism promised both equality and liberty, and I see these as polar opposites on a certain scale. The more equality you have, the less liberty, because it's sameness, and
Yeah.
the more liberty you have, the less equality you have, because people are going to do different things with their liberty. They're going to make different choices, and it's okay. So the way I've broken it down is that initially we had the socialist response to, or addition, or path of liberalism, which is a heavy focus on the supremacy of equality. We're going to make everyone equal. You get communism, you get fascism, you get all these different methods of enforcing top-down sameness. And then it was only like maybe 50, 60 years ago. Yeah, there's a tradition leading up to it, but we get libertarianism, which says, no. Equality is not the superior value. Liberty is the superior value, even if it allows for inequality. And so I see that's the two competing branches of liberalism that we've got going on today. We've got socialism versus libertarianism. But I don't know if you have
Well,
thoughts
yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, I
Or,
would.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And well, the thing that always comes up first is I try to sort of set the record straight historically, and just go back and explain what it was at the time. Because when we read about, if you're reading contemporaneous um, articles from the 19th century and they refer to liberals and liberalism, that means an entirely different thing than meant in this last century.
It's true. Yeah,
So
it's been
yeah, so
liberal has become conflated with progressivism. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
right, right, and even progressive used to be not a bad word. Like so in the 19th
Well, we all
century,
love
the
progress, right?
well, yeah, so capitalism was about property rights, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to and the idea of the anarchic market, and applying what's called classical economics in reality, and this. I'm trying to remember, it was David Ricardo or somebody. There's a few different individuals in various countries who are responsible for big upticks in this, and this was against the what the state wanted, against what the elites wanted, because it empowers people to make money, and it got them out of these little fiefdoms and out of the
Yeah,
serfdoms that they were in. So
yeah.
the end of
Owning the
feudalism.
product of your labor instead of your feudal
Yeah,
lord owning the product of your labor. Yeah,
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 right.
absolutely.
And so, and
Who thinks that's a
capitalism
good
was
idea?
was
Jesus,
right, right. And that's, by the way, what corporativism is a restoration of the feudal state.
absolutely.
And it's the only real difference is it's called something else. But there's still, as I say, the government form is heavily influenced by syndicalism, guild socialism, and trade unionism. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we see the guilds stuff and the unions, because I like to call them syndicates. When people get hung up on the word corporation because they really think that's a capitalist thing. And I point out that the word preexists the existence of capitalism. It always meant chartered organ of the state for trade, state
Oh,
trade.
yeah.
And what I was getting at earlier was that in these cases, the state isn't actually, like, it was only back in the old days when the state ran the economy and actually literally did buy all the bread or all the wine. You know, the French bought all their bread from Germany, and Germany bought all their wine from France, and then Germany sold the wine they bought from France to their citizens. And in that case, I guess you could have a situation where the more money was sent to one country or the other, and at the end of the year, if they had different currencies, there would be a balancing out of the gold value of those currencies at the end of the year. So I owe you 10 bars of gold, you owe me 20. So we'll cancel it out and you only owe me 10 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's that way we don't both have to send more gold back and forth to exchange and make up at the end of the year. That was when all this, so when the state completely controlled the economy and they exchanged gold with each other to balance out their currencies. That's what all that comes from. None of that's true anymore. It has nothing to do with anything. So there's no possibility of any kind of trade deficit, so to speak, unless the state is the one conducting the trade. And then when you start to think about corporations as being organs of the state and conducting state trade, which they are and always have been, it makes sense. And all of a sudden you say, okay, yeah, I guess we can have a trade deficit because it's actually the state that's conducting the trade, not individuals.
Yeah. Well, I've
So
thought about this too. And I always try to go to, okay, well, what do we do about it? Not always. Sometimes I have no idea, but sometimes I get an idea. And one thing I've been thinking lately is that wave a magic wand, we could dispense with or abolish the legal fiction of corporations. That doesn't mean people can't come together in groups and do whatever they want, but specifically what that means to me is the diffusion of responsibility that comes from, well, the company did it. I didn't do it. I'm just the board of directors. Yeah. I'm just this. I'm just a cog in the machine. I would return to sole proprietorship. You own the company. You are the guy. If the company fucks up, it's your fault because you own it. You are personally responsible. Now they've got all these limited liability company. Well, who says? The government. Oh yeah. Right. So they give you all these protections. Now I know people are going to say, well, it helps facilitate business because who could take that on? I'm like, well, the only people who should be doing things are people that can take it on. And if you can't, so be it. If you can't provide a safe product, you don't get to make the product and then have indemnity from the government saying, sorry, we're not going to allow you to sue. We're not going to hold one person responsible as the ultimate decision maker. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but that's one thing, the idea of abolishing the legal fiction of corporation itself. As
I agree. Okay. I think the whole thing is nonsense. Yep. And I agree with you completely. And for the reasons you say, I mean, this idea of limited liability. Now, one of the things I caution people, because I come into this, I'm an anarcho-capitalist myself, so I'm very much a capitalist. I just don't believe in the state, and I certainly don't believe the state is necessary for capitalism.
Nope.
And the arguments that I hear about that seem to me to be pretty nonsensical. So I just, usually there's no debate involved if somebody makes a claim like that. But on the other hand, I like to explain it to people if they don't quite understand the corporativist angle of all this, the idea that it's the state. It's not. These are not private corporations that are making these decisions. They're not.
Yeah.
And they're not making money.
And it's a big incestuous, human centipede thing happening. So, the government makes the rules, so the lobbyists bribe the government to make rules that are favorable to the business, so they get their kickbacks, and then just round and round we go.
Well, and that's if it's the scenario that's the regulatory capture.
Regulatory capture. Yeah.
And that would be bad enough, and I'm glad people are worried about that. But I'm actually saying it's even worse than that, that there's this corporativist arrangement where the government is simply bullying and bribing and extorting and whatever it has to do, coercing corporations to do what it wants and granting them monopoly powers over entire economic sectors so that they can implement those policies over entire economic sectors. There's no escape from them. You can't just go and I'm just going to take my business to the competitor. No, the state makes sure there are no competitors. Yeah. And we see examples of this. The most obvious one would be Amazon. So during this COVID nonsense, they basically made it impossible for anyone to run a small store, but they gave Amazon free rein to control everything and do whatever. And obviously gave them all sorts of subsidies and whatever. And again, Amazon was built over the course of a decade or more with losses, supposedly operating on losses for that whole amount of time, and that was a justification for them having the subsidies by the state in the form of tax breaks and other subsidies. So that's corporativism. The state is assuming the cost of maintaining an organization so that it can secure monopoly status.
Yeah, it's not okay. It's not good. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just so obvious.
Well, then,
like,
yeah,
you
and then
know,
people don't even look at it and go, "Hey, this is a problem." They go, "So what?" Like, I think we are dealing. You were talking about zombie apocalypse. I think we're in one, and
Yeah.
lately the meme has been the NPC meme. Like, there's a lot of people that just don't think. They can't conjure a mental image of an apple. They're told what to believe. A lot of people are sheep, and people have been saying this. We were talking about Art Bell, but the days of the explosion of, say, 90s conspiracy radio, where people talk about all kinds of things that turned out to be true, like 99% of it.
Yeah.
Everyone back then was saying CIA murdered JFK, and what did RFK say this year? Running for president, the CIA killed my uncle. So. Jesus.
We all knew it. And in fact, and the other significant thing here, of course, is that the term itself, conspiracy theorist, was invented by the CIA to discredit the people who were talking about JFK's murder.
Now, that's why I call myself a wizard. I'm trying to bring back this lingo, this understand. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but that is spell casting. That is literally what it means to cast spells.
I've heard this definition.
Yeah. Absolutely,
and the idea.
Kamala was doing it too recently. I mean, this is This is welcome to the political episode. I never talk about any of this stuff, but Kamala was doing it with the no. That's okay, because I talk about the guests' specialties in their areas. So you're one of the first people that's come along, and this is what you do. So this is what we talk about. It's absolutely fine. But Kamala was doing it too recently with that. What can be unburdened by what has been, and repeating it and that's why people chant at these rallies. Incantations, absolutely. And it's a lot of it is, it's brainwashing mechanism. I mean, imagine you're trapped in a thing or pressured into a thing, and all you hear is the mantra over and over and over, and it has a hypnotic quality. And that's why people say they're in a cult. Of course, they say people not in the cult. Those are the ones who are in a cult. That's what they say.
Yeah,
Of course, that's cult dogma. Everyone else is in the cult, not us. Not us. We're just the truth tellers. We're just the real people. By the way, chant exactly what I'm saying and say nothing but what I'm saying. But you're not in a cult. Chant with me. I'm not in a cult. I'm not in a cult. That's how it is. Well, one thing I wanted to do is, this is carrying it back though. Was it decentralization that you were talking about as a primary focus of yours, or am I using the word wrong?
No, that's exactly right.
But you have another phrase you use for it too.
I call it mass recall.
Mass recall. There you go.
Yeah, that's the name of the event. So in the book that I want to write is called Bunker Hunters, and it's the follow-up idea. I had done, these were just threads that I did on Twitter, and the Bunker Hunters. So like in March of 2020, really starting in December of 2019. So I knew something was wrong because even Facebook, which I had been using for a few years, was blocked, just took down everything I had. I had a whole bunch of just normal Mises quotes and Jefferson quotes and whatever, and they just took them all down and said, this is all violates our whatever. I was like, holy shit.
Terrorist propaganda.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And so I just stopped using Facebook entirely, and I blocked every single person. I had thousands and thousands of Irish traditional musicians who had followed me back and whatever. And part of it was just thinking that it was them, like reporting my stuff because they're commie left-wing Irish musicians. It probably is, some of them. So I kind of blocked everyone for that reason. And then I also excused it in my mind, saying, well, the truth of the matter is there's nothing I can do with Irish music right now, so I might as well just block everybody. That way, if anybody goes and looks at this account, they can't tell who I did or didn't like. I just blocked everybody.
Yeah, but it turned out it was, like top-down censorship from mods and whatnot, right?
That seems to be the case for sure. I certainly have confirmed that on Twitter since. But so in this March period when they actually declared the lockdown, because I'm a student of totalitarianism, an Austrian economics enthusiast. I've read, of course, Hayek, and Hayek's Road to Serfdom is about totalitarianism, the threat of the state taking over when you give it more and more responsibility. And So that in Hannah Arendt and many others that I've read, I knew immediately what was happening here. In economics terms, it was they were going for a planned economy, a command economy, which is a version of a planned economy,
Hmm.
by saying that everything must stop, lockdown, no more interactions. We're stopping society. We're violating every principle of epidemiology. Right. This is anathema to epidemiology because the whole idea is it's the epidemiologists are medical professionals and they're subject to the Hippocratic Oath. So you're
Hmm.
not allowed to kill your patient. Epidemiologists, their patient is society. And supposedly some quote unquote epidemiologist, or one turned out to be like a 12-year-old girl who was the daughter of somebody on some committee, right? Was the one who actually came up with the lockdown plan. But it turns out
Wow.
in epidemiology, it's, you can't kill the patient and do no harm, and of course cutting off society, stopping people from interacting with each other is catastrophic,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
irreparable.
We're going
And
to
they
fix
did
this
it.
by making sure you can't earn a living and you don't get any sunlight or exercise.
We're gonna
What?
Yeah, we're
What?
gonna fix society
And
by
they
killing
sold it,
society.
and the people ate it up like it's what we have to do. Wear 2 masks alone in your car. We have to. I'm saving people. You're not.
But
No, no. This is a
I knew
disaster.
from Yeah, but I knew because this happened everywhere, all over the world, simultaneously in exactly the same way, that this had to be the plan, and it was well orchestrated and
Oh
executed.
yeah.
So they have the global infrastructure to be able to do that on the ground. They have the global infrastructure to put a needle in your child's arm everywhere in the world already,
Yep.
and they've done it. And so that means we can't obviously pick one government or another. We can't pick one party over another. The only thing we can do is reject government and start again as towns. And so this
Hmm.
idea that I came with, so in March I spent about a month learning about everything I had to learn about, and also thinking about what we could possibly do. And I researched through history all the ways totalitarianisms and tyrannies have been overcome by their societies, and there are very few successful examples. Every single example that I found had a specific contingency plan in documentation by the state, such that I was convinced that those mechanisms had been thoroughly war gamed by the state already, and
Hmm.
they had plans in place that would increase their success if any of those traditional ways were attempted to liberate, ourselves from this tyranny. So the only thing I found when I was going through it is this basic idea of, like, in the old Wild West, if some sheriff turned out to be a bad guy and he was drinking too much and raping women and whatever, you could go down to the sheriff's office and knock on the door and say, "You're under arrest, sheriff. Like, you're not sheriff anymore. Get in that jail cell." If we actually did this everywhere in the world, all roughly at the same time, there would be no real violent recourse for the state, because and I explained this in one of my primary threads, is that there actually isn't very much the state can do if everyone is already essentially liberated by removing their local enforcers. If you
Hmm.
remove everyone in your local town, and they're going to be people in your family and your friends, because it's your town, right? So that means it'll be peaceful, right? All we're saying is you're losing your job and something's wacky, and so let's think about this. And as long
Hmm.
as and you just have to have enough people, and they have to be people who are known. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know what the critical mass is. I say 500 families, 500 to 1,000 families.
Sure.
So
It'd probably
three or four
depend on
thousand
the
people.
size, and it's a much more difficult proposition, say in a major city. I'm in Portland, Oregon. That presents its own problems as well, because I'd say
Well,
the
my
majority of
conclusion,
people disagree with
unfortunately,
my opinion. They like it the way it is, and they support the riots and all kinds of things, and they keep voting for the same people.
yeah. Well,
Jesus.
by the way, that's true too. My conclusion was that the cities can't be saved. Period.
Cities are a mess. Do not move
So
to Portland.
that's
Get out
why
of the
it's town
cities.
level. That's why it's town level civil rebellion
Yep.
only, not cities. And I
Yep.
think that the GTCS will occupy as a uh, what's the word I'm looking for? An archipelago. Essentially, the GTCS will be reduced to major mega cities as an archipelago across the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will be severely limited, but they won't be eliminated
Yeah.
at all, because we're not engaging with them. All we're doing is separating ourselves from their infrastructure, and
Yeah.
the areas around the cities will be iffy gray areas. I know it. I mean, this isn't a perfect solution, but it's the only thing we can do to get started,
Yeah.
and it covers all the bases. It's the only peaceful thing we can do. It's the only thing that'll be effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not violence, and that's what we're trying to avoid is violence. And what I'm concerned about is this idea, because people sometimes will say, well, but yeah, but if you go down to the town hall and do that, then the cops will just shoot you all up, and you'll be dead. And I'll say, well, let me ask you this: if you think your government will shoot you if you go down and complain about what it's doing, and that's the government you're defending, that you think
Mm-hmm.
it's an optimal circumstance to have government that will kill you if you complain about it? Like, in other words, there is no real argument in favor of that. It's just
Yeah, that's
I
not
don't
a
want to
selling
do
point.
anything, right?
No,
And the
yeah,
only real
and it's fair enough for people to say, "I'm scared. I don't want to get hurt. I'd rather live as a slave and not risk my neck." I can't blame them, but I don't respect that either.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
And it's going to take time, and people need to, like I said, the real crucial thing about mass recall, as I call it, is that it can only happen when people want it to happen, and that can only happen when they understand it,
yeah.
and then that can only happen when they see. And
And
once
that's a funny
but
argument people throw out there. It'll never happen. Well, it'll never happen if you don't agree to join me. So just agree to join me, and then we'll convince the next guy. It's like your own argument is, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Well, fair enough. Then you just disagree with me. Then you're my opponent. You're not. Then the argument is not that can't happen. The argument is I won't allow that to happen. That's a completely different rejoinder.
Yeah, and I can maintain the framework of my equation and just allow the variables that influence their decision making to be more favorable to me, because
Mm-hmm.
most of the people who, like, people argue this about the gene therapies. It's like, well, the gene therapies are sort of self-selecting those people out of the problem. Like, they're just
It's
not going to
true.
be. People talk about the percentages of the population that are going to be around to complain. It's not going to be those people. So that those numbers are going to decrease, not increase.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, these things always do increase, slow as it may appear. This idea that we're in trouble, I think, is pretty popular now. Like 30% of the people are like, yeah, something's really majorly fucked up, and maybe they don't know what to do about it, but they know that this is not normal and something's fishy.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and
And it all comes
then
down,
there's me.
like you're saying, it all comes
Yep.
down to spreading the ideas, which is then why they limit the visibility of accounts like yours and
Yeah.
other people that are speaking up. They're like, oh, we can't allow that idea to catch on. We're going to silence those voices. I mean, that's the whole thing about why freedom of speech is so important. It's like you give that. Okay, if I have a tweet I put out, well, X post or whatever, occasionally, which is, hey, I will agree to a censorship regime so long as I am the final arbiter of who gets to speak and what they're allowed to say. Deal? No one takes the deal. They think they're going to be in charge, and if you endorse it, you're not going to be in charge. It's going to be someone else, and they're going to tell you what to think and what you're allowed to say. So why would you ever endorse that? The people who do, I think, and it's been said before, they believe the people in control will be people who agree with them, and they don't
Yeah.
find out until it's too late. No, they hate you too. Why? Why you are sheep arguing to let the wolf in? Because for the sake of tolerance. I don't know what they're thinking sometimes. I'm like, a lot of
Well,
this
no,
stuff
you hit
seems
the nail on
so.
the head.
Yeah.
They think, well, yeah, I mean, it might not be fair, but as long as it's on my side, then that's good,
Yep.
and all's fair in love and war. I mean, this is the whole issue of the state, is that the libertarian argument stands, which is anything that we all agree is bad for me to do to you, should be bad for the government to do to anyone.
Yeah.
Right? It's really simple. That's it.
Yep.
Right?
People, and this is another spell casting element or illusion crafted, is that it isn't that the police have powers that the people don't. Like, we do citizens arrest, but that's not a power allowed to us by a generous overlords in the government. It's like you can take someone who's hurting other people and you can stop them. And
Yeah.
maybe to stop them, you have to hold them, and maybe you hold them in a room, and maybe that room has some bars, and maybe in the process of stopping them, they get hurt. This is just describing what police do. They are officially it's an organized system of doing what any normal human being can and should do in the face of some aggressive threat in the community. And it's not like the magic is in thinking it's something above, something better than, something more virtuous than, that there is the factor of qualified immunity, which I'm leaning towards eliminating it, although there's arguments in favor of it, of like, if the community sets rules and they all agree, okay, this is how our enforcers are going to behave, as long as they behave according to those rules, then they've done what they've been told to do by the community. But we're just so many steps removed from actually the community, which actually takes me on a tangent too. I mean, in terms of practical application of moving in the direction of your decentralization or mass recall, I think there's a good example in, say, many communities in America where they just don't cooperate with the police. I didn't see nothing. I don't know nothing. I'm not turning my people over to you. Even if they hurt someone in our community, we're going to deal with that in our community. We're just going to leave you just like this complete cop blocking right, of enforcement. And I think that's one path too of you can always start with your neighbors and say, hey, we look after each other. We're going to make sure no one gets hurt, and we're also not going to cooperate if the state comes looking for us. Don't know, never seen him, don't know that guy. I got nothing for you. Didn't see nothing, don't know nothing. So that can be one practical method of just non-cooperation.
Yeah, I mean, and it's for your self-interest too, because the state has no interest in protecting you. The only thing that can come about from interacting with the state is harm to you. Nothing good can ever come from it.
Yeah.
And as long as people get into that mindset, and it's not a cynical mindset, it's just precautionary, and it's literally what you have to do, because this is the record of the state. The state is a violent felon, if you will, right?
Oh, yeah.
We know it has a record of killing people indiscriminately and then justifying it and then having support. So really this is this is a certain kind of psychopathy, and as long as as people begin to look at people who take these jobs that work for the government or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it takes a certain kind of person to do that. A person who doesn't really either know what they're doing or want to excel at what they're doing at the very least, right? Because the only people that are stars in the state are celebrated for their skill are people who commit violence, soldiers, and also the sort of rile uppers, the politicians, the ones who get everyone riled up and angry. Those are the only ones who ever get celebrated. There's no expert person who they celebrate in the government other than somebody who's making weapons or is the quintessential soldier.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny thing. There's two comments I had there that just pinged up while you were describing all that. Is that government is full of politicians. It's made up of politicians in a way, and those. What is it? The type of person that most excels in politics, of being a politician, it tends to be more sociopathic types. Well, they will say and do anything, promise anything, backstab anybody in the pursuit of power. And it seems few and far between that we have really good politicians that are like, I'm just here to make sure the government doesn't get bigger and hurt more people. And we get folks like, Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and a few others, that just a bare handful. And hopefully that Freedom Caucus idea grows and we get more and more people that are like, we need to shut this down. We need to abolish alphabet agencies because they were never constitutional. But
I wish them luck and I wish them well, but I don't think that they can do anything.
You got to,
and I'm
well, the track
only
record
thing I'm
is
not going to do.
Not been good. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. And I'm just shy of saying, and they're kind of responsible because they're giving people false hope. And I think that's a real worry. It's certainly a concern of mine if I think, because I really do think that the state has declared war on the human race and is trying to murder us all. There is a series of things that it is doing, and I can go into those details, but this is why I sacrificed everything I was whatever the hell I was doing, all those things, Irish music, and, my whatever businesses I was running, and, it's eBay stuff. I mean, I just stopped it all and I just got on with this because,
Yeah.
hey, man, like it's fucking real. They really are trying to not just kill you, but like if you survive, um, genetically modify your offspring to be a biological weapons manufacturing plant.
Yeah. Well,
All your offspring forever.
Well, what I was going to say before, and this leads
If you
towards
survive.
a better understanding of the bigger picture. I think is that government is an organism. It's not. It's an organism in the sense that its top priority, like any other organism, is self-preservation. It will do anything to keep itself alive. That becomes,
Yes.
no matter what, and that's kind of the top priority of any group that forms is maintenance of the group towards whatever their ostensible mission statement is. Like the government, and then the mission statement becomes the justification for the self-preservation. Like, well, if we don't keep ourselves alive in this form,
How
can't
can we
serve
protect you if we don't? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If I don't get paid, then how can I protect you?
Yeah, well, then we get that full circle going, which is, how can I protect you without maintaining my existence? And to maintain my existence, I'm gonna have to kill you. I'm sorry, but how can I protect you if I don't exist? So, a good old catch-22, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. What is it? What is it called? Bootstrapping type of thing, and that's what government does. Government is like, we will maintain our existence as an organism above all, and that means above its own mission statement, to the contradiction of its own mission statement.
I've always referred to this as the definition of bureaucracy. That its function is to satisfy its mandate, but it can't satisfy its mandate unless it exists, and therefore its real first mandate is to exist,
Perpetuate its own existence. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are many quotes that are similar to this. And the one that I was thinking of was there's a bunch from, of course, from Murray Rothbard, but I was thinking of that essentially that it will always be to exist. It's never the mandate. It's never the mandate that they're supposed to be doing. And the only positive argument for bureaucracy I've ever heard, and maybe I even came up with it myself when I was younger, I'm not sure, but was that if you want an idea to traverse generations and be unchanged, you would need to create a bureaucracy to try to certify or ingrain that in some way, make it an institution, so that you come back 100 years and all the information is still there, everything that it was supposed to be doing, or I mean, if that's the only job is to sort of maintain that idea, I guess if you created a bureaucracy, you could maybe keep the idea alive. God only knows who'd be in charge at the end, but at least the documentation, hopefully, and the original idea would be there. You know what I mean? And it would just be maybe perhaps gigantic and not doing anything regarding this particular idea, but it would still be there somehow.
Oh yeah. Well, I had another thought while you were saying all that stuff too, and there seems to have been a what am I trying to say? A shift in, well, like once upon a time, and maybe I've got this wrong, but what I'm working my way through a new idea that I think I just came up with, but we'll see. Maybe someone probably said it way before me and better. But it used to be that we were like all about, as a human species, we were all about conquering nature to make habitable space for people, and then somewhere in the last couple hundred years and culminating around the progressive eugenics era, is like it became, well, humans are broken, therefore we must perfect humans. Nature is perfect, humans are flawed. And it's like this weird perversion of the kind of the Christian doctrine of original sin. It's like, accept that we are all fallen in a fallen world and nothing can be done about it. And the inversion is the world is perfect and humans need to be perfected. Therefore, we will do eugenics and breeding and different things and mind control and now the transhumanist movement of like, we need to, they say, become completely non-human in order to what? I don't know. In order to perfect what we can become. It's a weird.
I come at it from the Malthusian
Go ahead.
anti-humanist side. Well, finish your thought, because I was gonna. I'll introduce to the other
I
side.
probably had another tangent too, but I'm very much in the progress and tradition in the yin yang style. You can't get rid of tradition because that is stability, and tradition is as simple as eat 3 meals a day. You're human. We need food, drink water. This is tradition. You can't have progress out of human needs. Humans are what they are. Unless you fundamentally change what humans are, then you can, because you decided those needs are inappropriate. So we're going to try and do away with those needs by uploading our consciousness or whatever. But then there's also the progress side of things, which is, if there is some way to improve something, I don't want that avoided for the sake of maintaining the way it always has been. That's the argument argument against tradition, which is you shouldn't just blindly follow it, but you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater either. You shouldn't be like, because it's old, it must necessarily change because everything old is bad. No, sometimes old is as good as it gets, and the eternal truth doesn't change unless we discover something new, and then we can talk about it. And I think the range of progress, I don't think it's people who, that's why I say partly it's a cult, they believe in the arc of history. We're going somewhere. Humans are going to become something. We have to keep pushing in that direction, and they'll push everything over a cliff towards that end, whether it's helping or hurting. That was my rant. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's definitely true. So I usually cover these from I describe this Malthusian anti-humanism,
Yes.
this ideology that is pervasive in society. I picked that one because it's true, and I have a lot of documentation that supports all of this, and this ties in with cybernetic social engineering. Timelines match up, and this allows me to introduce all of my arguments that are essentially irrefutable. And then I had combined that with my simple observations of the gene therapy and the lockdowns and the whatever. There's nothing I've said that is in any way incorrect, and my objective observations show a real threat, and I'm just taking it seriously. The only difference between me and anybody else who knows is it's not just holy shit, things are that bad. It's so what do we do about it? Almost nobody else has any kind of idea of how or if something could be done about it. And so I went through this process because I realized that it wouldn't really be that helpful for me to tell everybody the sky is falling if I don't have a way to stop it. That's why I was investigating the historical examples. And when I found the thing that would work, I reasoned that out long enough to be able to say, yes, this can work, and it could work. The idea was to get the idea out on Twitter to a couple of people in every town on the planet before they cut off, because I was thinking, they might just cut off the internet. I might only have a week to issue a plan, and this is the best we can do. And that was what I came up with. So it's still true. It's still what we have to do. It's the downsides is I came up with this several years ago, and since then the government has already murdered a large number of children and people. And the point of mass recall was to prevent that, and so it failed. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have to do it that way. It's still the best way to do it. It's just we don't get to save the kids.
Yeah. It's like it's not hopeless just because the tragedy you saw coming actually did come to pass in some ways. Doesn't mean more and bigger tragedies aren't coming. So it's not a reason to say, let's give up because we didn't act soon enough. It's like, no, what is it like? Self-improvement mantra is like, the best day to start improving yourself was yesterday, but if you didn't, today is the best day. Hey, I hate to do this. I'm looking at my clock, and we're about an hour in, and I've got about an hour hard out for myself. I got to be done by 4 Pacific to get ready for my game stream.
So
tonight.
should I talk about my dream?
Yeah, we get into the dream thing. That's the whole point. Is we talk. So there's 2 things. Now, number one, I want to chill you and everything you do and just talk to you for fun. But also get to know you a little bit, feel out, or just absorb passively how your mind works. And I think talking to people before we get into the dream thing helps me a little bit figure out where they're coming from and which of many possible understandings of different ways of looking at things feel most relevant to that person. Long story short on that, I'm going to write down, it's right about the 1 hour mark. And okay, so as per my usual process, I'm gonna shut up and listen. Our friend Patrick's gonna tell me his dream beginning to end, like you experienced it, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm ready when you are.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks exploring the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, documenting the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
All right. I have notes that I wrote down the morning after.
Always
I think
good, yes.
within 20 minutes or something, I wrote this down. But basically, I'll paraphrase it as I'm just looking over it. I essentially I call this the white wolf dream because I encountered this white wolf. But I wake up in some kind of an RV or something, and a stranger hands me a small package, and I like intuitively know it's got weed in it. So I'm like, oh, thanks, man. I just accept the thing, and then I kind of drift off, and I'm asleep again for some period of time, and then I wake up, and I'm in like a metal container or something, and there are rounds, shells for like a cannon that are light blue, painted light blue, or I don't know exactly. It's weird to explain. And I'm lying in them in the whatever. It's a vehicle that's moving around. I don't think it's firing because that would have been really loud. And then I drift off again, and then I wake up and I'm in deep snow at the top of a hill with somebody, and I'm not sure if I'm like captured by them or I just ran into them or whatever. They're armed and I'm not, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily with friends, but I'm not being held at gunpoint or anything. And we're walking to the edge of this like parking lot area. It's definitely a wooded area, but there's clearly a parking lot and a little hill that with some trees on it, and there's a hill going down from the parking lot that's pretty steep, and it had been snowing for a while. We got to the edge, and we sort of fall and almost fall over the edge, but get stuck on the snow. So the snow is sort of holding us up. So we're just, sort of back to back. If either of us moves, we might lose the grip that we have. So nobody moves. And then this white wolf shows up, and comes and leaps, and it looks like it's going to eat us, whatever. And instead it puts its nose in between the two of us and gets stuck in a similar fashion. And by the way, I don't wake up. This is weird because usually you get attacked by the giant wolf that jumps on you, you wake up. No. And so then I have to sort of like wiggle my way after a while. The wolf is there on my back, but not biting or doing any movements. And I eventually shimmy my way back up to get onto the parking lot. And then I'm sort of trying to decide what to do, whether I try to do anything to disturb the situation or just get away. You know what I mean? I can't even really talk. I don't feel like I should make a noise or anything like that. I'm looking around. I can't tell what the heck is going on. And that's kind of where I wake up for this main dream.
Okay. Catching up with my notes here. All right, that's a good one. So you had, just to clarify for my own sake, you had multiple instances of waking up and falling asleep in the dream.
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
this was not actually waking up and then going back to sleep and having another.
Right.
dream.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It was all part, and it was all part of the same dream. Like,
Yeah.
like waking up and going back to sleep in the same dream. Not really going to, I mean, just having moments of awareness as part of the same timeline, whatever, you know.
Sure, and that would be the another thing to tease out is the idea of, so dreams very often have, like in a movie when it fades to black and just starts another scene. Dreams do that too, where we get to the end of a particular scene and then scene change, and now we're somewhere else. But you actually had the feeling of falling asleep or going back to sleep as a trigger for those transitional periods.
Yeah, I don't know if I would explain it that way. I just more just that I was aware for the event, and then I was. It's almost like it'd be closer to call it a blackout. You know, like
Okay.
then I blacked out. You know
So
what I mean?
if we were to say, versus the idea of actually, I went to bed and I remember putting my head on the pillow and feeling tired and then I slept, versus scene change. It's more
Yeah, it was scene.
change.
It was scene change. Yeah.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
But it was also. But I also knew that I wasn't conscious. I was losing consciousness.
Okay.
But it was scene change. So it's kind of like with the something I knew, and although it wasn't evidence based.
Gotcha. No, that's fine. Seeing something in the, like you telling me I saw a white wolf. This is the visual image presented to me, is exactly the same thing as I knew XYZ.
Yeah.
Because none of it physically happened. It isn't like you can go, this is a table, this is a pen. In dreams, it's like I felt the table, and I knew the table wanted me to put the pen on it. How did I know that? It just did. It just did. It's
just
all things
trust
are
me.
all things
Trust
are all things are equally real in dreams. They're equally unreal, so to speak. Well, so that's good. I'm glad I asked that too, because there's. I think I'm gonna lean a little more towards the idea of it being falling asleep, and you characterize it as losing consciousness. There's something to that. The fact that it wasn't just a scene change. It was a little bit more. It was something else. It was fading out from it, losing focus on it. There's a lot of different ways to understand this. There's paying attention to things and then not. You don't even have to be falling asleep. I'm looking at one thing, now I'm looking at another. That change of focus is significant. So changing from conscious awareness to losing focus, conscious awareness, and then being somewhere else that you didn't choose to go. In a sense, it isn't like I decided I needed to go and find a box with cannon shells in it.
I was definitely placed in there.
Taken there. Exactly. So I think these are all significant little shades of meaning that pop up with these things. So okay, you were. The first thing you said was wake up in an RV, or you. So this is more along the lines of come to consciousness, come to focus, or the beginning of the dream. Okay.
And I had it's one of the things I'm trying to avoid is I've tried to analyze this myself, and all sorts of tangents appear, and I'm sure I'm editing my original memory. So I only, the thing I trust most is the text that I wrote down, because all these other ideas I probably have come up with since, like I have this vision now that it's an RV, although I did say RV in the original text, that it was an RV that had like a mounted cannon on the roof or something like that. And maybe they moved me from the downstairs to the upstairs,
Sure.
to put me in.
We definitely try to make sense of these things after the fact. Yeah. There's what I think it was Freud warned about was secondary elaboration, where we do that. We start adding things to make it make sense.
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing here.
Maybe the RV was parked in a parking lot in the snow. How do you know? It could be all the same
these things definitely fit. Yeah, right. And then of course I had other dreams later that were consistent. All of this also just is consistent with my Bunker Hunters universe that I have been thinking about for years. I mean, it's all just seems like it must be like just a gift from the universe for a scene for my book.
Maybe so. And it very well could be. We could get all the way to the end of this and go, well, yep, that's exactly what it is. But but no, I think the fact that when you reflect on the dream, you go, I was thinking about this particular thing at the time, and the dream seems to fit. So not that it was just your brain going, here's a fantasy scene for you to write about, although it could be, but more like given the context of what I was thinking about at the time, what was on my mind, that led me to have this dream experience that speaks to how I think or feel about the broader topic. So that is one thing I was going to ask you, which is about when did this happen? You said it was recently-ish, a month or so, or
It was at this point maybe 4 or 5 months ago.
oh, okay. And then what I'm not going to do is ask you what was happening at the time. I want to go through the dream and then talk about that a little bit. You know, where were you at? What were you doing the night before? What were you anticipating? But you know, I don't want to get bogged down in that, because then we start assigning meanings to it before we've actually really talked about it. But looking at that in retrospect, but just to plant a seed and say, let that percolate in the background, and we'll water it with our conversation as we go forward. The RV. Itself as an environment, large, small, you know, dinky little trailer, a big, you know, tour bus size.
It seemed like a motorhome to me. I considered it a motorhome. It felt big enough to be, you know.
So the kind where you would drive it. It's not a trailer attached to a.
Yeah, it was.
Gotcha.
It was, yeah, and it was full size.
Okay. Any particular decor? You know, modern, older.
I seem to remember it having like wood paneling, so it was an older one.
Okay. And then, you know, well, just speaking of your experience with that kind of thing, is it bringing up memories of like you've been in something like that similar when you were a kid, or?
I definitely have been in RVs, and specifically, I went on a motorhome trip with my grandparents when I was a kid. So, it definitely is something that I could conjure up. Although, strangely, it was not that vehicle, and it was not in the arrangement of that vehicle.
Not specifically. Gotcha.
And strangely enough, also, like when I think about it now after the fact, where I was wouldn't normally be a place for a seat.
Hmm.
So my perspective actually is a little odd. But again, I was comfortable, so I must have been sitting on something, because somebody handed me the bag, and I was like, "Yeah, thank you, man." Like, I wasn't under duress. So you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I must have been. It wasn't like, you know, chained up on the wall or something. Obviously, I was sitting in a comfy chair.
Gotcha. Yeah. That was the other thing too. I was gonna say, where were you located? Were you in the fold down bed? Had you been sleeping, or you're sitting at a
I don't
kitchen
know.
table,
I
or you're
can't.
sitting in the captain's
Yeah.
chair? You know.
It actually just never occurred to me to think about. You know, maybe I did. I don't. And I have really clear visuals of almost all this stuff, except
Mm-hmm.
for that. I don't have any visual at all for where I was. I just the rest of the thing.
A lot of
Like
times
it
in
was.
dreams, we're looking out our own eyes. So when you think of this scene where the person's handing you the bag, had they come in through a door? Is there a door visible? Are you what are you facing? What's in front of you? You know.
Well, I think I might be filling this in now, but I'm assuming I could see to the front windshield or something like that, right?
So you're
Because
kind
I'm
of
in the
more
back
oriented
right.
towards looking out the front.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of in the if you're in the vehicle facing forward, I would be in the back right, looking left corner diagonally, and then the door on those kinds of RVs is usually just past me, you know, 6 or 7 feet on the right.
And I ask a lot of
But I don't.
questions and look for these kind of details. You just close your eyes for a minute and go, okay, what do I see? I see the front windshield. Yeah, I do. Okay, so it must be in the back. And why does that
Yeah,
matter?
right.
Oh, I don't know. Why did you put yourself in the back? Why not in the front? Why were you not standing outside the RV? Why inside? You know,
I might have been at the. I'm just realizing I might have been at the refrigerator. That's the place where the refrigerator might be.
kind of
So
the
maybe I was.
midsection kitchen area, sure.
Yeah.
And each section says a little different. If you're in the front, that's where the driving happens. That's where the choosing of directions goes. The kitchen areas, sustenance, meals, socialization. The far back where the bed is. You know, if you're in there, it's like it's a different state of mind where you put yourself in these places.
Interesting.
So over the past. And again, not to ask too much about the time frame, but just in general, you've been moving around a lot, traveling.
I've been
this-
in chaos traveling since I lost my studio. I mean, of course, it was chaos hermitage before that. So it's in general just been tough. A lot of stress for many
Yeah.
years now.
Well,
But
that seems very symbolic of travel, an RV. I mean, that's what it's designed for, and it's a rather comfortable way to travel. It's maybe even an aspiration of someone who's who doesn't have such a comfortable way to travel to say, God, if I only had an RV, this wouldn't be so bad. This would, I remember when I
Especially
traveled,
with a cannon on top.
right? If that's what it is, for sure. And it may be. And sometimes after the fact, we go, now that I think about it, I feel like that RV, the box I was in with the shells was attached to the RV in some way. Fair enough. You can go with that and say that feeling is as real as anything else. Or it may be a feeling of
But I
connection.
didn't have the feeling in the dream. It was just the things were in sequence, and I wrote them down.
Gotcha.
So, but
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. After the facts, I'm trying to maintain my awareness of adding information and distinguishing. It's okay for me to do it, but I just have to make sure I remember that it didn't come from the original dream. That was speculation.
Yeah, it's good to identify it as a separate element after the fact, just so we can look at it from that perspective, and don't confuse it for a direct image. So, what did the person look like? Any indication of what kind of a person they were that was handing you?
I got no people in this, like with the bag thing. I have no person, no face. It was just the bag and the hand. And maybe it was like I can't even describe the hand. I can't visualize it. It was that quick of a little transaction. The only person in the whole dream was the person who was armed, who I was with, that we got attacked. Well, first we got stuck in the snow, and then the wolf came and did whatever it did, which doesn't make any damn sense.
Right.
And like I said, and like you would wake up normally. Why didn't I wake up?
No, that's fine. And what I can do is I can kind of see in my own mind a little bit, at least my own version of this, where you were looking down at the hand, so you're not really you're not really examining the person as much as witnessing the action. The action itself, the handing of was
it was
more
hyper focused too. It was not a full scene. That scene was just looking at the bag. As you say, I guess what it was is I'm really looking at the bag, and I know what I know about what's in it. And then I say, oh, thank you.
Yeah, and that's something that would be. Your feeling was you were not disappointed to be handed that thing. It was a rather pleasant experience. Like
yes.
You did not have any. Did you have any feelings about why the person was giving it to you? It was owed to you, or it was a gift? It was a transaction. Like, how would you characterize receiving it?
I'm not sure, but if there was a feeling at all, it would be gift. Because I didn't get it didn't have the vibe, whatever, of, in other words, as you say, it was somewhat of a surprise gift.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, like, as opposed to, thank you. I mean, then again, that's a pretty subtle differentiation, and it's totally based on nothing that was in the dream. So I really honestly can't answer
No,
that.
well, a lot of times these things don't come to us until this is, I think, part of the magic of what I do is I don't know where these questions come from. I just am inspired to ask questions, and then you don't have to know where the answer comes from. You just, when you ask me that, this is the thought that comes into my head, and it's like it's related somehow. It pinged off something, and we get that radar signal coming back. And then we try and figure out what it is, but something's there. I think of a lot of these things as like beacons in the dark of night, a lighthouse on the shore. It tells you there's something there. It doesn't tell you exactly what it is, just something's there. Now we can look at it or not, and we can move towards it or not, or make sure we go around it, because if we're on the ocean, it's probably rocks. But it's a lot of these things are just, hey, look over here, and then we try and figure it out after the fact. So I guess what I'm getting from, and you can tell me, of course, what you think about this, but there's iconic representations linked to your personal life in the way of, you were reminded of traveling with your grandparents, even though it wasn't the same, but it was an older style of thing. And I imagine traveling with your grandparents was fun. It was more of an adventure, to be rootless for a moment, to be cast adrift, to go look for something different. And you're dealing with stuff where you're in this, as you just described it, like a kind of a chaos of life. And so an RV is very iconic of this, not wanderlust exactly, but definitely it's not a house. It's not a stable residence. It's a traveling, it's an icon of travel itself, of change, and whatnot. And you're in the, you're facing in the direction of travel. You're facing towards the the cockpit where you would assume control. You're looking in the direction that the thing would go if it was moving, and you're in the kind of social hearth middle kitchen section, and you're being handed something that is a gift of recreation, a comfort. So all of these things are coming together in like, look at where you are right now in a way. Is that making sense? I may not be characterizing it very well, but it's like dreams always start with a premise, with a thought experiment. Like, okay, what if? Now we're going to follow that out. So in this one, it's like, okay, here's where you are, and now we're going to look at where you're going, something like that. If it resonates, it does. If it doesn't, we can look at a different angle.
Well, I really honestly, when I say I've analyzed it, I really have not analyzed it in this psychological sense that you would analyze it.
That's how I've
analyzed it in the sense that's you're doing this other thing that's great. But what I've been doing is just thinking about it more and trying to think about not so much what it means as a metaphor, but more literally, is this like a vision from the future? Is this you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Very well.
Because usually I don't write down my dreams, and I do get some pretty fantastic dreams sometimes. But this one I had to write.
This one felt important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. And okay, so there's two things I got to say. I don't dismiss the spooky woo. We were talking about that earlier too. I love all that stuff. I'm very skeptical. What I do with dreams is I set it aside only because I don't know what to do with it. If you were to ask me, Ben, is this dream a prophecy? I couldn't tell you. Maybe, sure, absolutely possible. I don't know how to tell the difference, so I do stick to the purely psychological, and that doesn't mean that both things aren't true. It may be this is where you're going, and here's what it means to go there. Maybe. But
that's
I do.
True. Well, and also I should qualify this because it is. I'm interested, as we were talking about earlier. I like the ghost stories. I like conspiracy theories as entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's very disappointing to me that the government went and actually did the damn thing. So I have to actually hold them accountable to it, because it was much more entertaining when it wasn't true.
Right.
But
wait a minute, they just said UFOs are real. That shit's a psyop. Now I know it for sure.
Yeah, right. But yeah,
Yeah. But
anyway,
there's a very, I think it's possible what you might be describing is a feeling of significance to the dream itself, and I think that's true. I believe dreams self-select for importance. If you wake up feeling some kind of way about it and it sticks with you, you probably want to try to look at it and understand it, especially if you have been thinking about it since then. There's something in there that you feel needs to be understood. Some communication to yourself.
To myself, because I just don't get it. I don't really. I mean, the later dream. There was a dream a couple of nights later, and it felt like it was in the same universe, if you will.
Sure.
But there had been other dreams that didn't. So I wrote those down too, but they didn't qualify. But this one was like underground. I was walking around, and it was like this whole complex of, it had this big nice restaurant area, and there's some like darkened kitchen areas, and I was going through, and it was emptied out, but so it was basically an underground bunker. So
I was gonna say that speaks to the bunker thing. Yeah.
Right. So
sure.
this it's not. I'm not really making up much to say this all seems to be from the bunker hunters idea. But again, it was so vivid, and I can still to this moment conjure the specific images. It's more like I was in a room and there was a table. I can really kind of identify a lot. I can remember what the pub looked like, and it had like this corner area that was because it was underground, but this area made it look like it was in a space outside. They had like a little holographic effect. It was kind of a cheap glass holographic effect, but it gave some space to the whole thing. It actually kind of reminded me too of. Do you ever play Biohazard? Not Biohazard.
Bioshock.
BioShock.
Oh yeah. I just replayed the entire trilogy recently.
It's such a great
one of the
game.
best.
It kind of had a
stories,
feeling like that, like there was a big. It wasn't a window into the underwater, but it felt like that. You know what I mean?
Sissy boy.
It gave the illusion of more space outside, but I could tell that it was a illusion. It was a hologram. And I don't mean like a projected electronic hologram, but a literal hologram imprinted into the glass. You know, when you make it.
Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was petting the cat, and then. so that's that first section, and we can just leave that where it is and move on, and because we're trying to evoke. What I found is, if I try to jump to conclusions, of course we haven't gotten through the whole thing. But we start. The picture paints itself in a way. We just talk about it until it becomes clear, and it's each new question and interaction is a little bit of a brush stroke that happens with that. So. I don't know that we need to draw anything else from that. So but as far as describing the transition, scene change, were you standing still in the same place when you realized you were starting to fade out, losing the visual, or did you go somewhere or do anything else?
It really, well, part of the reason I think of it, I was describing it as blackouts, is because I had this brief image of being handed the bag, and then I sort of said or meant to say thank you. Maybe I didn't even say it, and then quick scene change, and I wake up in the magazine of whatever it is, and I try to think of some of the details of it, and I can picture it. It's hard to describe, and I'm not sure it really makes mechanical sense as a magazine.
Yeah.
And I know enough about these things as that my imagination should have filled this in. But it's strange that it was kind of. These are the kinds of questions I'm asking myself. They're not really deep metaphorical questions. They're like technical questions. So.
Sure. Well, that's my question too. Is okay. So you kind of a fade out to fade in. Now you awaken in a new. So what is the rough? It was more of a fade out. It was
a longer scene and more of a fade out with the magazine. And it was moving, but I don't think it was firing. And something obviously told me there was a cannon, because maybe I heard the cannon some other time.
Yeah.
I guess it's just the shells. Right. Yeah.
That could be enough of it. But my question was, what was your sense of the physical space you were in? Was it very small or rather large?
It was pretty small, but as a magazine, probably not so small. It's probably pretty big. But there was only like one or two. Yeah, right, exactly. And obviously, I couldn't have just been. What I'm picturing is dividers, steel dividers, with the shells in them. And if I was laying on top of that, that would have been very painful. But I wasn't necessarily uncomfortable or in pain from that. So maybe there was an area that didn't have that. I just didn't think of that in the dream.
Yeah, when you say cannon shells, you're not talking about cannon balls. You're talking about the shells that would be shot by.
Yeah. Look like a normal shell, but are the size of a liter bottle, or a little bit smaller than a liter bottle or something.
I don't think I've ever seen one in real life. I don't have any concept of how big a cannon shell is. I mean, it's all going to depend on the barrel, but I think there's smaller ones and larger ones.
Basically,
there's ones shot by the Navy ships that are like. What are 3 feet wide or something crazy?
Well, the gigantic battleships,
right?
Those things are insane.
Those are basically just cannon shells as well. It's all the same technology.
And of course, like M1, A1 cannon shells are insane. Have you ever seen those? Usually they do like Sabo rounds and stuff like that. But they put, it's the same idea. They just put an enormous amount of
probably the biggest shell I've ever seen is a 50 cal. And that thing was heavy. It's huge. But I'm used to smaller rounds. Anyway, so you're in a container. Like if you were put on the spot a little bit to estimate the size, we're talking like 10 feet wide, or 6 feet wide, or 3 feet tall, or are you laying down, standing?
Probably. I think maybe 3 feet or 4 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall, let's call it, and a little bit. So maybe 5 feet wide and a little bit longer. And I can't picture where the shells. I can't even picture whether the shells were going anywhere or anything. They were just there. So it wasn't movement. It wasn't a belt. either.
Gotcha,
Like you would
yeah.
think that's something that would be belt fed, but they weren't. So maybe it was just storage. Who knows? And that would make more sense too, because if I was actually in the place where the cannon was firing shells and it was firing them, that would have destroyed my hearing and would
Oh yeah,
have been very
yeah.
uncomfortable.
Well, if we just stick to kind of the vague impressions that you already gave me, it may be certainly well enough. The impression that so you're in a box that's maybe 3 by 5 by it's very small, and maybe you didn't feel cramped in there. You weren't like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm trapped, cramped, or
I mean,
anything.
I was like, I was cramped, but that was not my immediate concern.
You
It
weren't
was,
panicking,
it was everything else.
claustrophobic style. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah.
Yeah.
And so
And
there's
by the
there's
way, I can be claustrophobic, so it's unusual that was not part of it.
yeah, okay. Usual not. So the impression you had was that the box was moving because it was attached to or on top of a vehicle, and the natural inclination was part of a tank. Whatever these shells would be used to shoot from, like why else would you have them?
At least this was my inference. I didn't know that at the time, but
Sure.
but yeah.
I mean, we could say just vaguely, rather than specifically, attached to a vehicle that it's because the box appeared to be shaking as if in movement.
Yeah, that's
And then like you could, even if you close your eyes just sitting in the car and you just feel it, you're like, okay, there's the sway of going around corners, there's the feeling of acceleration, there's the bouncing over potholes. There's ways to know you're in a vehicle and it's moving that have nothing to do with visuals. To see, and whether or not it was a tank, maybe it was. Maybe you were on the, it could have been anything, but it was a vehicle of some kind. Fair enough.
And it was part of the RV and the White Wolf part. There's a separate scene, but I knew that it was in the same universe.
Related. Yeah. No, for sure. And actually, I was going to say earlier that I've had conversations with people in the past where they said, hey, all of my dreams take place in the same universe. I know I'm in a different part of the same dream or the same area that every one of my other dreams. Like if I walk from one area, I go into another area where I've dreamed before, and I recognize it as being part of that other dream. That's fascinating. So it's not, and they can tell and they've had other dreams that are like, well, I had a dream that was not set in that universe, so to speak, and they can tell the difference. So when you say, I had other dreams that I knew were in the same universe, I think it's true. Where I go with that is the idea of so there's different levels. Like if you are, and I spoke to one person where like every dream, they said, Ben, every dream for decades has been in the same universe. They're all connected. I'm like, okay, this is something. But if you,
they all have the same tone or whatever is the best way I've
just the feeling like I'm in the same world. This is my dream world. They have a concept involved. What I was going to say is that there's other times where we revisit the same thought experiment, and literally we're in the same universe as a previous dream, which was geared towards understanding a particular concept. We're revisiting the concept. So metaphorically, you're in the same space. You're in the same intellectual, hypothetical, theoretical, exploratory space. So that may have been the case. So whatever this dream represents to you, you've been back to that to analyze it, to understand it further, kind of dipping your toe in the same swimming pool. Long story short on that. The impression I'm getting with this is you're in a container of ammunition. So there's something unique to that idea. I mean, what is ammunition for? It's used to shoot at a target, and in a military sense, it's the means by which you defeat the enemy. And you are in the ammunition box as if what popped into my head as if you are also ammunition. Now you don't get the sense that you are a shell, but you are in the box. It's like you've put yourself in the box with the ammunition. As if you are also ammunition. I think there's something there. And what I wanted to say was like, why light blue? They were painted, or I mean, because what comes to my mind is brass shells. I mean, but they were, what is that?
And that was so. And this is one of the things I have a really vivid image of. It's not that they were like shiny metal blue, not like blued. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever seen steel that's been
gunmetal blue? They say, yeah.
Not like that, but like painted blue. like light blue,
Like a baby blue, powder blue,
like a
pastel.
1950s, pastel light blue, and the whole shell, as far as I can remember. I mean, I think the firing pin in the back might not have had paint, but I mean, actually, maybe I couldn't see that. Maybe I'm just imagining that.
Mm-hmm.
They were the way they were stacked in these whatever split up by dividers in the thing. They were just the whole thing was painted blue. I can't remember if the bullet part was, if the round part at the end was painted blue. I don't think so, but I just can't picture the whole thing. What I was intrigued by was that the whole metal shell that would normally be brass was painted blue or was blue.
Yeah. Do you have any associations with that color? Like when you think of that color
Well, the
itself?
UN. I mean, basically, it was UN blue.
Okay.
I mean, and actually, I think it really was UN blue. But it's such.
Bam.
It's
UN
not like
comes to
it's not
mind
like the
immediately.
UN paints its rounds UN
No.
blue. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that brings a different shade of meaning to this. So maybe you're not the ammunition. That was.
And by the way, there was a slightly lighter. It was like pastel blue is a better description than UN blue. It wasn't exactly UN blue. It was a little bit lighter.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, and I'm not trying to seize upon something and hold your feet to the fire of like, okay, well, that's it. We've decided this is what it means. But I like to.
That's what I thought about myself. So.
No, and I think that's exactly how these things work. If I say the word tomato, what comes to mind?
Potato.
Tomato. Absolutely. So where does your brain go with that? Your brain goes to word association in a different way than someone who says pizza. So that's where we go with those things. It's like it's not the potato is important as much as the kind of answer you're giving in a range. So the idea that this blue is not exactly UN blue, but it feels like it. It's like that's the association that comes to mind is maybe rather than you being also a piece of ammunition, although that might be a part of it. Like ammunition has a lot of and the reason I'm using that word is it has a lot of different connotations to it. Like if we admit to being wrong, we give our enemy verbal ammunition against us. So there's ammunition of different kinds, and it can be but more like seeing inside the enemy's ammunition in a way. Like, because I'd imagine that you're not no fan of the UN like I am, or as I am also not. So to be inside their ammo box is like to see the weapons they have at hand to use against their enemies. If that makes sense. And which I think is kind of part of your journey. I mean, at least it makes sense, and not just your current journeying, but your overall journey of like understanding what bad people are trying to do to the rest of us. So if you put if you put yourself inside their ammo box, that's like the most intimate view of it. Doesn't get any more direct understanding than that's the bullet they're going to shoot at the people I'm trying to save. I'm going to stop there for just a moment and let you think about it, feel some kind of way about it, or tell me I'm way off. Sometimes you get a zing, you go, whoa, wait a minute.
No, that gives me a bit of a zing. Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds pretty consistent with all the other stuff. And it's funny that I didn't think of it that way.
I think it's hard sometimes to do this kind of thing ourselves. Like, I don't want anyone to rely on me, but I think you have to talk to someone and have them ask questions, whether it's me or not. I don't know that some of these things, like some of these get real. There's different layers of like beginner, intermediate, and expert level on dream interpretation, and some of these in the intermediate to expert level, you gotta bounce it off of someone. The beginner level stuff is more like anybody can do it by themselves. Just write it out, start doing some word association, and some ideas will come to mind. But some of these are like, it's like you can't see the back of your head without a mirror. You just need somebody to give you a hand. So I think that would be maybe related to the first part. So dreams, we transition from one section to the next in a way that like the first scene triggers the next. And the next is a continuation that refines an idea and takes it further into the final scene. For you on this one is 1, 2, 3. So there's something about looking at where you are currently in your life And it triggers this idea, I would say kind of rootless traveling, grateful to have your recreation, facing forward the way the RV would go, maybe wishing you had an RV because you're couch surfing or staying at different locations that are less stable than, say, having your own mode of transportation or vehicle to live in. So where you're at right now in your life as a representation of this journey of understanding and moving towards, what is it? Moving towards fulfilling a meaningful purpose in the world. Like what you've been through has brought you to where you're at, and you're looking at it also like, we all ask ourselves, has this been a mistake? Am I where I want to be? Has this been necessary? Did I make a mistake? This is a big thing we ask ourselves a lot, especially when we're suffering for a just cause. We go, yeah, should I have just kept my mouth shut and I could have been way more comfortable? I always think about that too. But then, so that examination, okay, let me look at where I'm at right now. What's going on? And that leads you to, okay, well, why did I get here? Maybe. And the answer would then be, I got to look at the enemy's ammunition. I saw what they were going to use to hurt us. I was inside the ammo box in this very visceral way that I could. You can't unsee that. You can just choose what to do about it. Well, I'm going to fight back or I'm not. And then my suspicion is that the next part of the dream is to say, well, I did choose to fight back, and here's how I think it's going. Maybe here's the difficulties I think I'm facing moving forward, or here's how my self-assessment of how good I'm doing so far. I might have jumped the gun a little bit on that one, letting that cat out of the bag before we even start talking about it, but that is the progression that suggested itself to me. So we can even not get any feedback from you on that. I don't have to ask you if you think that's right or not. I'll be looking at, does that fit in terms of the experience we're going to describe?
Yeah, no, that definitely is it's certainly a candidate. It would explain another aspect of it I hadn't considered.
Yeah,
which
and
is evaluating.
I hold on loosely to all these things. Like, okay, I had an idea. Is it the only idea? Is it the best idea? I don't know. I got a cat here. He's making his bunny arms. You see him? He's making his bunny arms.
Yeah.
Little bunny, CC boy. He's one of our old men too. We got a lot of old cats, and we just got another rescue. My wife found a kitten in the bushes the other day, and now we got a kitten.
Cool.
Every time, we can't stop. We're hopelessly cat hoarders, except they're all well cared for. No, just my paper. Stop it. Okay, so we got at least another 20 minutes here. That's not bad. You've had the experience in the metal container with the shells, the ammunition, the ammo dump, the ammunition box with the cannon shells. And these are big. That's the other thing too. Is this wasn't small arms. This is big. This is like invading army style. So that speaks to the scale of or at least how you perceive the scale of the threat. That this is no joke. This is not a pea shooter. So you fade out again and come back into focus in deep snow with an armed person in a parking lot, and the parking lot's at least up a hill, where there's a hill nearby. That's
and I call it a parking lot because it was a flat. I mean, I guess it could have been a soccer field or a little pool or something. It was an unreasonably flat surface that was covered in snow with a hill that went off that would be consistent with a parking lot. Although there wasn't, I can't remember anything parked in it. There was no RV or anything there. But I have the idea that it was a parking lot, partly because I think I saw a road going at the far right edge from where I was. I could see, or I believe there was a road going down from there.
Okay.
So I think it was a parking lot at the top of this little hill area because there was a little building. And again, the building, I can't remember. I don't know if I just invented the building, like whatever, the day after I came up with this dream. I don't think I wrote it down, and I think I would have written it down. But I think I created the building to explain getting into the underground bunker.
Maybe so. And that may have actually been part of that next dream, which is that, oh, by the way, since you know you're in the same universe as the previous dream, you got into this underground area from the parking lot through a little building, and that may have been an addition that came after this dream based on the next one. Fair enough, and it may not be. Sometimes we fill in blanks that aren't exactly critical, like why a forest or a wooded setting would be more important than why a particular tree right there. Well, it had to be somewhere. You had to see some trees to know it was wooded. Anyway, so not every element is determinative, so to speak. I don't know, but how do you tell? My answer would be, it didn't seem to feature heavily in the events of the dream. It was just part of the environment, which is fine. Well, you didn't see any street lamps, like light poles that you would see in a parking lot. That wasn't what gave you the impression.
That's an interesting question, and I thought about this afterwards. Did I see any street lights? And my impression was that that I could see the part of this is, if you've ever been out when there's so it may have just been like strong moonlight.
Sure.
And a snowy environment with, what I mean? So a lot of reflections. And so it seemed to me like there was an unreasonable amount of light for what was clearly darkness. Or
so
at least,
this was happening at night?
It was happening at night, I'm pretty sure. But again, these are the kinds of details that it's difficult, because I go, if I go back and think about it, I can picture it both ways. But the feeling that I got was from the quality of the light. And the quality of the light reminded me of strong moonlight on snow.
Okay. And that's very different than, say, a pool of yellow light coming from a lamp, street lamp.
Right, yeah. And but I also can't say, because maybe there were, the feeling of that sodium yellow light on snow is a different color, but it's really similar to the feeling of the moonlight thing, because it's a kind of a particular bandwidth or particular wavelength that is unnatural normally, that's being reflected back, and that's what the sodium lights feel like too. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't remember it being yellow. But then again, the more I think about it, I can picture it that way. So I think I'm just unreliable.
Right. Yes,
for
sometimes after
question.
the fact. No, that's fine. That's fine. And you were with an armed person, and you knew that you weren't friends, but you didn't have the sense that they were that you were their prisoner either.
Right, or maybe I was tentatively, suspicious, and so what I mean. I felt like I was the intruder, and I had been captured or being held for questioning or whatever. But it was just because, who the hell are you? What are you doing here? And I had no good explanation. And, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it felt like to me.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if they were, but I didn't really know. And this was just the sense that I had. And I wasn't like, I felt like I should probably protect the guy against the wolf. But then I was like, well, the wolf didn't really attack either of us, officially speaking. And wouldn't it be stupid to save a guy who was armed and a wolf when I could just run away? And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that was when it ended. Like it was indecisiveness about what to do next that ended the dream.
And the phrasing that came to my mind is viewed skeptically by a stranger. Because you're like, the way you were describing it was, not a suspicious person. Like, so this person maybe they're there, they know where they are, but they don't know who you are. So they're gonna keep an eye on you. So but it's not like they didn't arrest you, they didn't put you in handcuffs, they weren't aggressive. They were just, as you would treat a stranger. You don't know their motivation, you don't know why they're there. You're just like, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, right. It's almost like another. I think I actually did imagine this at one point, but it wasn't part of the dream. It's almost as if I woke up in an RV that wasn't mine, and the guy's like, "Who the hell are you?"
Right.
Hold up your hands. Take this bag of weed.
And when you're having a very different interaction with someone. Someone brought you a gift, and you weren't suspicious. Right. You were grateful. Right. You were like, "Hey, this is something I want. Thank you for giving it to me." And it's very, very much it's I think an iconic of a comfort type of thing of like, hey, even if life is tough right now, there's the little things. I can still enjoy some.
Maybe they were out of order. Maybe that was the result, and maybe
But this person in the snowy area was not the same person that gave you the gift. Definitely.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Oh, but you didn't have that impression.
Who gave me because I didn't. I had the impression that it was all together, and that the RV was associated, and I just assumed that the person was associated with all of it.
Maybe so. Yeah. But it would be. I think it would be not that dreams can't be nonsensical, but I don't know that it would make sense to you necessarily to say, okay, this person who gave me a gift is now going to treat me suspiciously. Like what's that all about? So I think I don't know if that fits. I think it's got to be someone different. I was just trying to make sure. I was just trying to make sure, but it's okay that you don't have a strong impression. It means
or another way to interpret this would be that
honestly.
Well, there's something I also didn't mention, which I may have invented, which is
never know.
that. Well, I was thinking maybe his family is involved here, like maybe him and his wife and his kid were trying to escape all the madness, and they came across a crazy person, and he doesn't know, he wants to protect his family, so maybe it was the son or the wife that gave me the bag. Who knows? I mean, I actually can't even say whether it was male or female.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like something like that. This is just me adding to it. This doesn't.
In a way, yes. In a way, yes. But you could have understandings that pop up that are not just secondary elaboration, that are not expanding on things and filling in gaps from pure imagination. So when you thought back on this guy and what you believe to be his motivation, there's if he was malicious, you would get that aggressive, I want to hurt you vibe. I'm not here to help. Yeah. And this one, you're like, his motivation was understandable. It's understandable as if he's got something worth protecting, like a family, and he doesn't know if you're a threat to his family, so he's not going to welcome you with open arms. He's not going to trust you. He's going to treat you like a suspicious stranger. So you're kind of fleshing out his motivation in your mind of like, okay, what did it feel like? What did his vibe feel like? It felt like a man who had something to protect and was just being reasonably cautious. Rather than, because you could have attributed to him a different motivation. It could have felt different to you, and then you would have described it differently to yourself. So you've got someone here who's, they're not an enemy, but they're not a friend. They're almost neutral. They don't trust you. So, okay, this is where I was like, when we looked at, like, where are you at right now? How did you get there? You saw the weapons of the enemy and how now you're, in a way, you're out in the world, communicate, and you're conceptualizing, okay, how do people I don't know, how are they going to look at me? Who's going to trust me to share what I've seen and to, how do I communicate this to people? So if that kind of feels like where we're going with this is your self-assessment of like, how do I think I'm doing? How do I think it's going? What do I think is the likely outcome of my efforts? There's something in that vein there, and I may not be expressing it perfectly clearly. You almost fall down the hill. How did you guys get to the edge of the hill and fall down? Were you moving in the same direction together, or did?
Yeah, we were walking along, and I was thinking to myself, how did I get myself here? Who is this person? I didn't have it, so it was almost like coming out of a blackout, but walking. So I didn't have as much information as I would have expected myself to have in that sort of circumstance. But we're walking. I was questioning. I knew I wasn't armed. I knew he was. And there was no talking, and he wasn't facing me, so I can't even get a face. But we got to the edge of this flat surface, and we both slipped and ended up getting lodged in the snow. And I was thinking to myself, well, this is an opportunity for me to run away. Should I just keep falling down the hill into the snow and get away that way, or should I try to back up? And then the wolf shows up, and then the wolf leaps, and instead of eating us, separates us and kind of almost in a way provides a way for me to get back onto the parking lot, so to speak, as that I've come to call it. But then the question is, well, because the wolf kind of fits all these descriptions too. It didn't necessarily mean me any harm. It didn't bite me. It didn't eat me. It may have just saved me from somebody who, I can't, which is the good guy, which is the bad guy here.
Sure.
I mean, guess I should assume the human is the good guy and the wolf is the bad guy, right? Because
Sometimes
that's the way this, yeah.
or there's no bad guy, and there's just different motivations.
They're both good guys, yeah.
Certainly, the wolf represents something. It's not there for no reason.
And the wolf didn't eat him, and he didn't shoot the wolf.
And the wolf wasn't aggressive.
Well, it was aggressive. I mean, it came up and it leapt, and did. I mean, I expected to be eaten by the wolf. It just didn't do that.
Gotcha. Well, I think there's a difference between the wolf was aggressive and you were concerned that a wolf would be aggressive, and he did jump at you, but then the result of that jump was something other than being eaten. It was yeah. So what came to my mind? But
he was still growling. He was still growling, but not moving. Like I could tell the wolf was afraid too of falling because he got in the same situation as us. So the wolf was trying to keep still, but still pissed off. So it was growling.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But so I had to shimmy my way up, and the wolf just decided it wasn't worth it to try to turn its head and bite me because he thought he'd fall down or something.
Okay, fair enough. So well, it's good clarification. I didn't want to jump to the conclusion that the wolf was there to be aggressive or to eat you or to do it. So, but maybe he was. And if that's the impression
either really is a possibility, and
fair enough.
The fact that it didn't bite just is kind of demonstrative of that.
Yeah, or he might have wanted to, but he's like, hey, I'm going to reconsider because now we're in this shit together, which is actually part of where I was going too, is like, you're in this place with a person who, let's say they represent the idea of a stranger with their own life and family to protect. So they don't know if they can trust you or follow your advice. Maybe if you're there to warn them, this is all falling on the shoes of, I've seen the ammunition, I need to tell the world. I need to tell other people that there's a problem, that they're in danger. And so maybe you're in this. So what does it mean to be in this parking lot in the woods? I mean, you're away from city type of areas. There's at least a plateau where it can be a destination for travel, and a flat space. You would imagine cars would be parked, so there could be other people there. But then there's also a hill, and you guys are moving in the same direction together. So if we think of it this way, like whether or not you and someone you're talking to are allied, or they view you suspiciously, we're both moving, say you and me, we're both moving forward in time in the same country that's having issues. So we're, in a sense, we're moving in the same direction. We're moving forward in time towards whatever's coming, and what's ahead of us is
we are denizens of the same.
Yeah, we're in the same floodplain, so to speak. Like, it's gonna hit us both, however we feel about each other. And there's this, like, as moving forward, you get to a place where there's a slippery slope, which is that phrasing came to my mind. Literally slip. But because you are together, you actually prevent each other from slipping independently. You there seemed to be an element of the dream which was, because we were back to back and able, it was the presence of each other that kept us from sliding down, which is, I mean, very in that metaphorical sense of like, we must hang together, or surely we shall all hang separately. If we don't, the thing that's going to prevent us from falling down this cliff individually is that we're holding each other up. So there's a representation that, you can't do this. You can't save the world alone. You got to do it with other people, even if it's just one other person to in that sense. But a completely different danger presents itself. I mean, there's a vulnerability in being in that position where now you're vulnerable to predation, like natural forces, like a wolf could come along. Just the idea of a predator taking advantage of a precarious position. I'm gonna stop there for a moment. Like, does all of that sound or feel right? Okay. Well, good deal. I don't want to just stop me anytime.
I like this, and I like these interpretations, and it's consistent with what I'm trying to limit myself to what I originally dreamed, and it's helpful to be able to add these things as long as I remember to clarify that they're
for sure
post dream.
And then there's also the thing where, like, everything I'm doing is secondary elaboration in a way. I'm like, I'm giving an idea of an understanding to what it might be. And all of it could be wrong. I've been wrong so many times before, and I'm not here to tell anyone, you should listen to me. You should take my word, because I don't know shit. I just have ideas and I share them. I tell people, none of the answers are in me. I'm just a guy who has a lot of crazy ideas. And even the predator gets stuck and has to rely on you. So there's like it may be iconic of the environment itself. Not just wolves, not just animals, not just predators, but like the natural world around you. It's like there's the danger goes far beyond just the two of you slipping off the cliff. Even the natural world that might mean you harm, might be a dangerous place to live in, is going to suffer from mismanagement in a way. There's something, I don't know, if it feels like there's something there. There could be something else is tickling my brain that I can't pull out, but I'm like, what does the wolf mean?
That would be totally considered. I mean, I'm not sure how you attach that particular conclusion to the dream, but that's exactly what I think. So what in the dream specifically connects that, other than my real world beliefs on that?
Well, that might be it. I mean, if you look at that and go, let's see, how does dream interpretation even work? It's like, I make suggestions like, what if we look at this as a symbol for something else? And you go, you know what, actually, that's my philosophical position. That is exactly my philosophical position. I'm like, there you go. And there's a lot of things about, okay, why a wolf? Why not a snapping turtle? I don't know. Wolves are, we have iconic representations in our brain of things that stand out to us as, like, some people might say, when I think of the forest, I think of wolves. And another person might say, I think of trees. Another person says, I might think of the moss growing on rocks. And those would all mean various shades of the natural world. This is how I conceptualize it in an iconic image. And there's also something about that too. I think you said that there was, it was partly because the wolf was on your back that you were able to get back up. Like he gave you extra leverage or
so the I was scared that the wolf first, again, thought it was going to get eaten, so I wasn't really worried about it. Then immediately after that, I was just afraid that the wolf was going to cause us all to go thrown down the hill. And then when I realized the whole thing was staying still, and the wolf was not budging either, but for fear of disrupting the precarious position, that I decided, well, I can't wait here forever, and I'm not waking up. Because I think I knew I was asleep. I wonder, this is a good question for you, because I have had, when I was a kid, I had a lucid dream, at least one, and I've had lucid dreams before. It only just occurred to me that this might have been a lucid dream too, but I don't think so, because I don't think the reason that I wanted to get out of that situation was because the dream was becoming boring. You know what I mean? That it would be stupid for me to waste my lucid dreaming sitting next to a wolf, so therefore I'm going to cry. You know what I mean? I think it was just strictly a regular dream, not lucid. But I'm attributing something to my deciding. Basically, what I'm pointing out is that some time elapsed in the dream that gave me okay, well, I'm not eaten, I'm not going to be eaten, and I can't stay here forever. Mm-hmm. So I guess I better. And I didn't want to say, hey man, are you okay? Or good doggy. I didn't want to do anything or say anything.
Yeah, that was, there was an indecisiveness. There was an urge. I wrote down urge not to talk or make noise. Like you weren't. Okay. And then I think you'd said specifically, I was unsure what to do. What was I going to say? So you were able to perform a rescue in a way. You were able to get yourself and the wolf and this man all back up on top, and then you were in a position of, okay, well now
could have been able to. I didn't actually do any of that. All I did was get myself up onto the parking lot, and then I was like, well, should I go back and save the guy and the wolf? What should I do here?
Okay, no, I missed that. I thought you brought it with you, and that may have been my misunderstanding from listening to you earlier. So you were able. to
I only got myself out of it, and then I was like, this is what the hell's going on? What do I do? And I just didn't know what to do, and that was the end of the dream.
Fair enough. Well, okay, so if we're following this train of thought that this kind of arc of the narrative that we've been establishing, where you went from, where am I at right now? Hey, was this all worth it? Well, I saw some things that I couldn't keep quiet about. I saw danger coming and I needed to tell people. But look, if I tell people, they might treat me suspiciously, and that might leave me vulnerable to other natural things, like nothing more dangerous than, say, being out of doors in bad weather, and there's animals out there, and but in a way, you're like, okay, well, we're in this together. We're moving in the same direction, and we start this slide. There's a slippery slope waiting for us. We catch each other, and even the natural world that I'm worried about as well, that the damage to the environment around me from an environmentalism standpoint, and from, I got to live as well, so I don't want the world wrecked, the world itself underneath me to be destroyed. I got to live here.
Yep.
All of that, actually, the resolution to the dream in a way was I can unburden myself from caring about the world, from caring about other people, and extract myself from the danger. I can do that. But then you get to the top and you look back and you go, this doesn't sit well with me. I'm not happy
Right.
to leave them in peril, and I don't know what to do about it. And then you wake up.
Yeah.
That seems, does that speak to you in a way of like the resolution of the dream and what these symbols might mean?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I came away with it when it happened, and I wonder. Let me just look at what I wrote down.
Sure.
If I wrote that feeling down.
And the wolf may mean or symbolize something else other than the natural world, but it's a good shortcut for the moment of like not focusing.
No, it
on
is, and it's consistent also with my whole worst case scenario of prion infestation, whatever,
Sure.
like seeding the environment with prions. That's going to kill not just people but everything. Boy,
Going over the notes.
pretty interesting.
Were you looking for more in your notes?
Oh, I was reading through it to see if I wrote that feeling down, and I didn't necessarily.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, that might be the best I can do in the time we have. I think we're kind of. I'm glad we got actually through the dream and maybe some understanding of what some of those elements could mean to you. It's not always the case that people go, wow, that's exactly right. Sometimes it's like all of that makes a lot of sense and I need to think about it. Fair enough. Don't take anything I've said. If anything I said inspires you to find a different understanding of a given symbol and I was completely wrong, I'm happy with that too. If upon further reflection you look at it and go, it's not what he said, but it was close. It was something else. Like, wonderful. Very happy with that. But for what we've got, I think it fits pretty well with who you are and kind of how you would approach an understanding of these things.
Yeah, it's totally unsurprising in one sense because it's kind of I'm kind of transparent, like everything I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
So it's really not that difficult to believe that it would be as transparent as that. But what I didn't think of was me measuring my own performance. Have I been successful? And also, what I mostly got from it was just this indecision of like, what the hell am I supposed to do? How can I advance any further? What's the next step? And I think, probably the next step for me, because I'm so suppressed on Twitter and everything, it doesn't seem like I can actually reach people that way. I think I have to do a book or something else. And it's certainly not going to hurt for me to do a book. And I've been planning this Bunker Hunters idea. Well, Mass Recall deserves this fictional universe, future history thing that I want to do. And I could do it as a book. My original idea for Bunker Hunters was about getting other people to write it. But
I always have that idea too. I have a bunch of ideas, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to write any of them. We'll see. Now, some of them I do. Like, I've got a plan for an entire separate series called A Wizard's Guide to XYZ, and it'll be first A Wizard's Guide to Aesop's Fables, just to wet my beak and break into that, dip my toe in the water, so to speak. Wet your beak is something else.
Wet your whistle.
Wet your whistle. Yes, exactly. I'm thirsty for a new project. But I've got another 5 or 6 dream books I got to get published, and I've made zero progress on that in the last months and months. That's okay. Hey, I got 17 out there right now, which I was going somewhere with all that. No. Okay. So in terms of, I think a lot of people do self-assessment, and am I doing what I want to be doing? Is it working? I think we do that a lot, and it isn't always momentous. It could be as simple as, do I want to change lanes on the freeway? Is that lane moving faster? Or do I want to move over to the right because there's an accident up ahead? We're always assessing things and thinking, should I change my behavior? So you've got some pretty momentous stuff going on where you're like, I see a really big problem. I really want to help. I've tried. It's upset the apple cart of my life in a way that I didn't anticipate and has made it harder to survive. And so in a way, you're looking at it going, is this worth it? Do I want to do this? But you're not giving up. You're just like, is it okay? If what I've been doing hasn't been working so far, how do I fix that? What's the next step? And my question was going to be, if this came up 4 or 5 months ago, did you get the Bunker Busters idea afterwards, or you said you'd already thought about it beforehand?
The Bunker Hunters idea goes all the way back to Mass Recall. I think within a month or two.
Gotcha.
In fact, I wrote the Mass Recall thread 4 or 5 months before the movement license tweet.
Gotcha.
So that super famous 50 million plus tweet was months after. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting one of those someday. just one. Yeah. Okay. Well, then the dream may have come me an answer to that. I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I write this book? And then ever since then, you've been increasingly convinced I probably need to get this done. I probably need to do this. So, and then you've actually returned to it in other dreams. You've had other dreams that return to this, the universe of this dream, considering the same topic. And those dreams might have been, am I certain this is the right path? Second guessing. It could have been, okay, how do I implement this? What do I think is the most likely successful path? Those would be my guesses about those other dreams. The likely subject
I think
matter.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't. And by the way, that is one of these answers that I think I accept as true, which is that I need to work on the Bunker Hunters thing. Whether that's a book or doing it as a TV show or a movie or a cartoon series or whatever.
Sure.
I think I just don't have the time and effort to rely on myself to I can flesh this idea out. I could be the executive producer, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could I can't afford to spend 10 years writing a whole novel, learning how to be a novelist in order to do that. It's not impossible, and it's probably a good idea, and maybe I'll do it and I'll get rich, who knows. But I would rather see is a culture of this type evolving around that idea, even if I don't get credit for it and I'm not writing any of it.
For sure.
Right. Do you remember the TV show Firefly? Serenity was the movie.
Oh yeah. Great series.
Like that stuff like that. Because there used to be a culture. We used to have, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't American, but there used to be a culture of freedom. And if we can have a new culture of freedom and have it based around these kinds of ideas and have our fiction reflect the state of the world that we want to see.
Yeah. The thought that occurred to me is it's a big undertaking to say, I'm going to write a whole novel. Believe me, I know I've tried over the last 20, 25 years. I've had a novel in my head for a long time. But for you, it might actually work in this sense of okay, I know the world that I want to set this in. And you could start by doing small pieces, little novellas even, or essays almost. Here's one person or a family living in this world, and here's their experience specifically. You don't have to worry about the big picture of what's everybody else doing. Don't worry about it. But I would say if you write a few of those here, there, and everywhere, not only might they be little compelling things to throw out there, but that might become the book itself over time. There's all these different people in the world, and then you can have them interact with each other. And anyway, just an idea, throwing it out there from one guy who's not going to write his book ever, probably, to a guy who's trying to write his book. Let me give you advice.
And I totally will. Especially this happens to me more with music, so I'll tell people what I would do in your situation. This is the way that's my joke about it.
Exactly. Let me tell you how to fix your problem, which I am not invested in at all, and will suffer no consequences for. Okay,
but it's absolutely true. It's this the mote in your brother's eye thing. You know what I mean?
No,
you
it's
clearly
true.
see it.
Yeah, I should clean my own room. Damn it, Dr. Peterson. Well, okay, speaking of cleaning the room, let's do the housekeeping and wrap up the show. I am out of time, unfortunately. So once again, this has been our friend Patrick Green from an indeterminate location somewhere in the American Northeast. He has been in the past a terrestrial radio host from the 90s, a professional database developer, audio engineering hobbyist, podcaster, Austrian economic economics enthusiast and shitposter extraordinaire on X. You can find him at Road to Serfdom 3. Link in the description, of course, below to his account. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe on your way out, smash that like button, etc. Tell your friends about the show. I have 17 currently available works of historical dream literature. Book 3 featured this week is Oneirochronologia, Volume 1, the evolution of dream interpretation over time, shorter works of historical dream literature that are presented in an 3-volume anthology set. So got that going for me, which is nice. You can find all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, including audio-only MP3 downloads of this very, very podcast. Also, if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, join the community there. It's free to join, attached to my Rumble. Really, if you're listening to me on Rumble, why wouldn't you join? Just click the button. Just click the locals link below. That is enough out of me. I will say, Patrick, Mr. Road to Serfdom, thank you for being here. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks, Benjamin. It's been definitely a great time, and thanks for having the kitties there. I love cats.
I know, and look at this. He came right for the end of the show to show the camera his butthole. I bet you, like they do. Okay, last thing to say to everybody out there is thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Talk to you later.